The Federal Reserve is raising interest rates in an attempt to tame inflation. Since 1961, they've done this 9 times, and in 8 of those instances, that rate hike cycle created a recession in the U.S. economy. The question that many of you have asked me and concerns that you've shared recently is, are we headed for another recession? And it's a valid question because when you have a recession, you also typically have a decline in the stock market. All of us remember that recession of 08-09, where we had a meaningful decline, temporary as it was, in the stock market. Interestingly, many economists over the last few weeks have reduced the probability of recession for the U.S. economy because it has continued to surprise on the upside because of economic growth driven by consumer spending. So that begs the question, will the U.S. consumer be able to save us from a recession? And that is the topic of this economic quick take. I've put together 4 short slides to answer this question of the U.S. consumer's ability to save us from a recession. Let's start with why the consumer is so important. Let's take a look at this bar chart here on the right. And the blue shaded area shows that 68% of economic growth is consumer spending. And so the consumer is taking care of 2/3 essentially of the economic growth we're experiencing. And to have a recession, you really have to see a pullback in consumption. One of the things that was interesting happened last week was the president of the Federal Reserve of Atlanta mentioned that they think economic growth for the 3rd quarter is going to be close to 5% on an annualized basis. And if we look at this graph here on the left, that is way above the trend of 2%, which is what we've seen essentially for the past 2 quarters. So the consumer has definitely been strong. The question now is, does that consumer have staying power? I think the best way to look at this is to understand how much spending power consumers currently have and will have. Well, let's see the financial health of their balance sheets. I want to start with this graph on the upper right here. And it's showing the excess savings by household. And we want to look at this blue shaded area. And this is where we've got really peak excess savings happened in mid-2021. This was really driven by all of those stimulus payments to prevent us from getting into a very deep recession. And as you can see, that money is running out. In fact, it's almost gone. That says consumers may not be able to continue on this spending spree like they have been. Let's take a look at the chart right below it, which shows revolving consumer credit. And this is essentially credit card debt as a perfect example. And as this line is going up, it means that credit balances are going up. So the consumers are definitely spending down their savings, starting to use credit card debt again. In fact, the personal savings rate is the bar chart over here on the left, and you can see it's dropped meaningfully recently. So consumers are starting to approach a point where they may be tapping out as far as being able to keep up with the spending that we've seen. And that will definitely be a headwind for economic growth going forward. Probably we will not see the effects of that until 2024. Next, let's look at retail sales, specifically growth in retail sales. And you can see here that there was a spike after the stimulus payments, which follows with that excess savings number we looked at. And then it has been trending downward since. We've got the retail sales number today, actually September 14th, 2023. And when you exclude the increased expenditures because of energy, retail sales grew about 0.2% versus the prior month. So we're still seeing some growth, but it's not the same rate of growth that we've seen. So all of this data is really combining to say that the consumer's ability to have this economy grow above expected rates, above that 2% trend line that we looked at, is really running out. And if we do see a recession, it's going to happen probably in 2024. Again, the economists have said that they think a soft landing is possible. Soft landing meaning we're not really going to have a recession, or if we do, it should be very mild. I think this data currently supports that thesis, especially considering one last data point. I began this video saying that 8 of the last 9 times that the Fed was hiking interest rates to tame inflation, they created a recession. What would make this time different and change that probability? And it is this statistic, unemployment. The unemployment rate remains at historic lows. If somebody wants a job, they have a job, which means there will continue to be discretionary spending available from the consumer. So I think this is the argument most economists are using to justify this idea that we will have a soft landing and avoid a recession. If you like this video, you got something out of it, please click the thumbs up so I can get some feedback around that. Feel free to share it. And as always, if you haven't subscribed, definitely subscribe to the page. Click on that little bell so you'll be notified every time there's a new post. As always, thanks for watching.